been a little while since we've had a language question. Unfortunately, I think the answer is going to be a little disappointing. Try as I might, I could not find a comprehensive list of every word that is spelled differently when used in America versus when used in the UK. There are several very long lists that I could pull from, but in the end I think I may need to reframe the question a little. Instead of finding exactly which words are spelled differently, I can provide you with a few examples of types of words that get spelled differently and provide a few examples in that way. This is, unfortunately, the best that I can do. To start, OR versus OUR. Perhaps the most well-known, many words used in British English that end in the OR sound spell the word with OUR. Honor, color, valor, neighbor. This isn't a hard and fast rule, mind you. There are still many words that use the opposite spelling you would think they would use. Or, better yet, there are still many words that both American and British English spell the same way. And some of them are the American way, and some of them are the British way. Arbor, for example, is always spelled with an OR, at least if it is in reference to a tree. Glamour, similarly, is always spelled with an OUR, at least until it gets conjugated to glamorous. ER and RE is another fairly well-known spelling change. Words that end in the sound can have the E and R flipped around either way. In British English, these words would be caliber, fiber, leader, saber. Again, this is not a rule per se, as words like chamber, oyster, number, and murder are all spelled with the ER in both styles. Many other words in the English language have the ER ending, but since we've borrowed so many of them from other places, there are plenty of ER words that don't get changed. Mother, danger, quarter, river. When a C is added into the mix, both versions use the RE spelling. Acre, massacre, mediocre. The biggest flipping of the E and R in America tends to be in proper names. Many theaters are named theater. Center is also commonly used for buildings and places. Finally, words that keep their French pronunciation retain the RE in both versions. Genre, cadre, oeuvre, Notre Dame. A little more rare is CE and SE at the ends of words. In some cases, the usage of CE and SE are used to determine if a word is a noun or a verb. You might ask me for advice, or I may advise you. You may also notice that the pronunciation of those words is different. Both American and British English keep these spellings separate so we can tell the difference when reading and speaking them. British does the same for practice and practice, whereas American just uses the CE version to mean both. Offense and offense, and defense use the SE version in America and the CE version in Britain, but when conjugated, they always switch to an S. Defensive and offensive. And now the Greek language gets involved. For many words, especially medical words, British English uses either an AE or OE in the spelling, where American English would just use an E. Celiac, leukemia, estrogen, pediatric, and so many more have the A or O included in the spelling. American English does include the extra letter in words like amoeba and archaeology, and British English allows for both spellings of words like chameleon and encyclopedia. Similar to the CE and SE switch, we have ISE and ICE, or YSE and YC. The CE versions of both of these spelling changes have been attributed as Americanisms, blaming America for their usage. However, at least in the I case, the ICE spelling actually came before the ISE spelling. Anyway, words like analyze, realize, and organize use the S in British and the Z in American. Some words that end in the OG sound can be spelled OG or OGUE. The longer spelling is typical of British English, with the shorter tending to be from American English. Analog and catalog are great examples. However, in literary terms, the UE is left in American spellings. Dialogue, monologue, prologue, and epilogue. Perhaps the hardest difference to summarize is the doubling of certain consonants. This change goes both ways with British and American English, and has so many different rules and usages that it might just be easier to see some examples. Bust, traveler, cancelled, fulfill. Just as odd as the silent E that is missing from some words. Aging, routing, judgment, and acknowledgement all lose the E in some spellings, but keep it in others. There are dozens, hundreds even, of other examples of spelling changes between British and American English. However, these other examples alter how those words are used, or are somewhat derivative of an earlier change we discussed. Sorry I couldn't be more specific with your answer, but the English language is just the worst sometimes. Thanks so much for your question. This next question comes from SkyGuy91. Which questions from Jetlag's Hide and Seek have never been asked? Okay, so maybe this is another one just for me, but I love this show and I love this question. Unfortunately, it may be impossible to answer. Don't get me wrong, I'll do my best, but the only questions that we know for sure are in each game are either the example questions given in the voiceover at the start of the season, or the ones that are actually asked during the game. I have taken some screen grabs of the board that they use for each season, and the iconography is typically pretty distinct for what that question is, so we can maybe make some guesses. Also, each season appears to be more directly tailored to the zone they are hiding in. Switzerland, Japan, New York City, and the United Kingdom, respectively. So there may not be much overlap season to season. In particular, the Switzerland season is the most different, as it feels like a pilot or test season for the hide-and-seek concept. After Japan, and indeed the printing of their purchasable home game, the boards have looked almost exactly the same. So, let's start with Switzerland. Here is the board as it appears in the introductory VO. Across the 4 rounds that get played in this season, these 26 questions get asked. The VO that explains the categories also tells us what these 3 symbols mean. The little mountains is your elevation higher or lower than ours. The little church building is send us a photo of a local church. And the train is send us a 30-second sound clip from your train station. I guess most of these aren't questions, huh? Oh well, it's what they call them, so I'll keep using that term too. Okay, now the hard part. This first category is relative questions. These questions all compare the hider's current location to some aspect of the seeker's current location. With some context clues, we can guess that the 3 people is the population of your town higher or lower than ours? airport symbol is probably, is your closest airport the same as ours? The border outline icon is probably comparing some inner area of Switzerland, as the one above it is Canton, but I don't know what it could be. The flags with the line is probably closest international border, and the buildings might be nearest major city, but I cannot figure out the line of dots, speech bubble, location, pin thing, or the outline of Switzerland. I thought that last one might be distance from the Alps, but after a quick trip to Google Maps, I was proven very wrong. Using context from future seasons, I would guess that one of those is your train station on the train line we are currently on, but I couldn't tell you which one. I guess it might make sense for the speech bubble to be, is the majority language in your area the same as ours, but that truly is a guess. The radar questions are very straightforward. They did not ever use the 100-foot, 500-foot, 1 mile, 3 mile, or custom size radars. The photo questions also feel like they might be easy to guess. The t-shirt is probably photo of a clothing store. The shopping cart is grocery store. The courthouse is probably town hall or other government building. Or it could be a museum, maybe. And the sun with a cloud is probably just photo of the sky. I can't tell what the icon left of the shopping cart is, but I'm guessing it's a train or train sign. The top right icon is clearly a snowflake, so maybe it's take a picture of the snow in your area. I also cannot identify the last icon. It's either a skater or a fountain, and either way, that would be a picture of whichever. The oddball questions are even harder to deduce, but their icons are pretty great. The shopping bag is probably buy something and send us a picture of the bag. The bottom center is probably send us a picture of trash or a trash can or something to that effect. And bottom left looks like a beer glass, so possibly send us a picture of you with a local beverage. I don't know what the running away from a tree icon is supposed to mean, nor do I know what the man on a sign or TV icon is, and I really don't know what's going on in the bottom right. But the one just above that probably has something to do with street signs. The precision questions get even weirder. The leftmost column appears to be, are you within 1,000 feet of a river, park, or roundabout, respectively? And then, highest rated restaurant in your town, maybe? The next column has something to do with bakeries, universities, and hospitals, but it could be distance to or cost of. The next column could start with clubs, maybe, since that looks like a turntable. And then maybe something about the nearest intersection, then highway. I don't know what the remainder of the top row is for. Those two building icons or that crossed off square thing. Really curious what the bell question is. Maybe, can you hear bells? The bottom right might be, are we on the same road as you? Really hoping the one above that is, can you see us right now? But it could just be, can you see people? I want the little atomic symbol to be distance from burn, or the super collider itself, and I don't know what's going on with the diagonal line of people. Japan comes next, and this is the set of questions that gets used in all future seasons. The categories are pretty much the same and look like this. Across the 6 rounds of this season, these 33 questions get asked. The VO that explains the categories also tells us what these symbols mean. The buildings icon is your nearest major city the same as ours? And the little bridge is send us a photo of a bridge. For the rest, we must guess. The matching category compares the seeker's location to the hider's. I can see that the bottom left icon has something to do with language, but I can't imagine what. The outlines with 3 and 4 in the subscript are something about administrative districts, which is the fancy way of saying state-defined subdivisions of the territory. basically, they never ask about the third and fourth smallest divisions of Japan, below the prefecture or the district. I don't know about the train with the A, but it's probably, are you on the same train line as us? The little island icon might be, are you on the same island as us, since Japan has multiple islands? But a similar icon in the measuring category is about coastlines, so it could be, is your nearest coastline the same as us? But that feels hard to identify, so it's probably the first thing. Speaking of the measuring category, this category measures whether or not the hider is closer to or further from something than the seekers. Many of these icons are obvious: road or highway maybe, park or forest, train line or train station, McDonald's, and 7-Eleven. I don't know what all three of the water icons mean, but I'm guessing the top right is ocean, center might be non-ocean body of water, and that might make the bottom left indoor pool or water park, maybe. Who knows? Hey, look at that. They used all 4 types of thermometer. Radar comes next, and is just as obvious as last time. They did not use the 1 mile, 3 mile, 5 mile, 10 mile, or custom radius radars. Tentacles are new to this season, and ask the hider which of a particular type of building or structure in some radius is the closest to them. The bottom right, for example, looks like a film reel, so it would be within 1 mile of us. Which movie theater are you closest to? Now, in practice, they can only be used if the hider is also within 1 mile of the seeker, and to use it, you would just send them a list of movie theaters within 1 mile of you and ask them which is the closest to them. Anyway, the one just above that is probably library, and the top left is subway station, probably, but it is also 15 miles, so maybe a little more broad. Train station, perhaps. Photos make a return, and the cast was nice enough this time to ask almost all of them. The second column starts with a picture of your local McDonald's, and I can see a picture of your local 7-Eleven sitting kitty corner to it. Between them appears to be museum again, and the far right is either picture of station or picture from train station. The 2 left is kinda tough. The solo tree might just be tallest tree you can see, but the picture one has been used in other seasons and is photo away from you. The next season is actually a mini season and serves more as an advertisement for their home game. Don't get me wrong, it's a fun set of episodes, but I don't want to have to purchase their game just to know what they didn't ask. Anyway, here's what their board looks like. And hang on, that looks just like the UK board. Put that up next to it. Well, looky there. Okay, change of plans. This appears to be their standard board. They explain in the New York episodes, but they take off certain questions when the hiding area is smaller. So you can see more tentacles, a longer thermometer, and an extra row of photo questions in the UK board. I think I'll just combine these two with some knowledge from the Japan season to figure out the information we're missing. The final season of hide and seek, at least as of this recording, takes place in the UK across 5 rounds. They ask these 32 questions. The VO that explains the categories also tells us what some symbols mean, but they are all symbols that get used in the season this time, so we can glean no new information. The New York mini-season only has 17 questions asked during it, and since the boards are so similar, it only allows us to eliminate 3 more. But this does show the heart of the question, right? With the same board available across 7 or so rounds in 2 very different locations, they still ask basically the same questions. Clearly, there are a lot of questions in the game that the cast of Jetlag does not like asking, or does not think are helpful. Anyway, the matching category is much larger within the Japanese game, but many of the same symbols make a return. I still do not know what the language thing in the bottom right is, and they still haven't asked about the fourth smallest administrative division, but all the other symbols look new. The road icon is your street or nearest highway, the same as ours, and those mountains are the same as they were in Switzerland, so probably elevation again. All the other symbols look pretty straightforward, so its nearest park, amusement park, zoo, aquarium, golf course, museum, movie theater, or just theater maybe, hospital, and library. In fact, the measuring category uses almost all of the same icons as the matching category, with only a few swapped out. Those that are swapped out look very familiar to the Japanese game board, so I am going to assume that those icons mean the same things, and this question category is just used for different information. The fact that they are both draw 3, pick 1 categories does reinforce this a little. Radar is interesting, as it looks like they use the 1 mile this time around. They still have not ever fired a 10 mile, 5 mile, or 3 mile radar. The thermometer category is very popular, it seems, as once again they use all 4 categories of thermometer. They don't use as many tentacles this time around, but the ones they do use are tentacles we've seen before, so no new information there either. Last, as ever, comes the photo category. This one is just as tricky as the Japan round, but I think we can figure out what the symbols mean. The top left is probably picture of your train station. The top right is probably picture of your nearest restaurant. And 2 below that is picture of a church. To the left of that is some buildings, but tallest building you can see, and picture with 5 or more buildings have both already been done, so I don't know what that's supposed to be. The solo tree is back, and I stand by that being tallest tree you can see. Below that is probably picture of your nearest park, and above that is picture of your street. Well, that was something. I do hope at least some of those guesses are correct. Anyone with a copy of the home game that wants to correct me, leave those corrections down in the comments below. Thanks for that question about my favorite internet TV show. This last question comes from Phil. How many different half this and half that creatures are there in mythology? A lot. I love this question. It's right up my alley, and it's going to be very difficult to answer. First, we have to decide on what counts as a half and half. Are we looking at the full construction of the creature, or are we adding together the percentages of the parts used to make it? Let's take the centaur as an example. As you can see, a centaur is half man, half horse, which is to say that 50% of a centaur is person bits and 50% is horse bits. But if we look at it from a sort of construction angle, we can say that a centaur is a horse whose head is replaced with the body of a person. The body of a horse is most of the horse, we'll say 80%, and the body, head, and arms of a person is roughly 50% of a person, depending on where the body stops, I guess. That would make this new creature 130% of the constituent creatures. I'm no expert, so I'm just going to use my best judgment and go through this lovely list I found on Wikipedia of hybrid creatures in folklore. To be certain, I will be skipping those creatures that are head of a something, body of a something else, since the head is such a small percentage of the overall creature, as well as many, many creatures that are made up of more than 2 creature parts, like the chimera or sphinx. If you do want me to talk about either of those kinds of hybrids, don't be afraid to ask in the comments down below. Alright, let's get started. Ironically, we're starting with a creature similar to the centaur, the hippotane or hippotanes. This creature appears to be a true half-person, half-horse, with the front end of the horse being the upper half of a person, and the back half remaining a horse. Perhaps its cousin, the Onocentaur, is the upper half of a person and the back half of a donkey. There are a couple of half-snake, half-woman creatures in folklore. Echidna from Greek mythology, Yuhua from Chinese folklore, along with her male counterpart Fuxi, Lamia, which originated in Greece, Naga, which can be a man or woman, I suppose, and Tlanchana, or the Anchane from Mexican folklore. These are all upper half person, lower half snake or serpent. Anjte is a human woman top half and horse bottom half. A Glaistig is a Scottish fairy, which can take on multiple forms, one of which is a human woman top half and goat bottom half. This is also where I thought I would mention Pan, satyrs, and fawns, but it turns out I was mistaken on their makeup. They only have the legs, horns, and tails of goats. Most of their lower halves are still very human in the paintings I was seeing. A griffin has the front half of an eagle, including the wings, and the back half of a lion. Breeding one with a horse produces the hippogriff, which has the front half of an eagle, including the wings, and the back half of a horse. Hippo, being the Greek word for horse, also gives us the Hippolectrion, which is front half horse, back half rooster, and the Hippocampus, which is front half horse, back half fish. Similarly, and obviously named, the sea griffin is a variation of the griffin, which has the front half of an eagle and the back half of a fish. Harpies have been depicted in many ways, but they are half bird, half woman creatures. They share some construction with the sirens, which are also half bird, half woman. Half human, half fish creatures have had many names across many different cultures. The blanket term merfolk refers to any person or race of creatures that are top half human, bottom half fish. This includes the traditional mermaid, as well as Sirena and Syukoi, Jengu, Triton, Ovakojak, and Matsaya, to name a few. The Ophiotaurus has the upper half of a bull and the lower half of a snake. A sea goat has the front half of a goat and the back half of a fish. A periton is often depicted as a deer with wings, like a woodland Pegasus, but in its original description is the front half of a stag with the back half of a large bird, including the wings. A sea lion, most often seen in heraldry, is the upper half of a lion with the lower half of a fish. Valraven, from Danish folklore, is half wolf, half raven. This is typically shown as being the head and body of a wolf with the wings, legs, and tail of a raven. It is also seen regularly in heraldry. A kinara has the upper half of a woman and the lower half of a bird. Scorpion men from Mesopotamian folklore are depicted a number of ways, but most commonly are the upper half of a human and the lower half of a scorpion. Also from Mesopotamia, the Kusariku has the upper half of a human and the lower half of a bull, as well as the horns and ears. Were creatures are often described as being half man, half whatever they are. Although, a werewolf, for example, is often depicted as a human, a wolf, or some anthropomorphic wolf, rather than being a mix of wolf parts and man parts. Dungeons & Dragons has extended the were lore to include all kinds of creatures, including, but not limited to, werewolf, werebear, wereboar, werecat, wererat, werehyena, weretiger, wereape, and wereraven. Speaking of D&D, they have invented many new creatures, including several half-and-half ones. I know you asked about mythology, but D&D has permeated the culture enough that I feel their contributions should be noted too. There are several centaur-like creatures, including the Dracotar, which replaces the horse half with a dragon half, and the Drider, which is half drow, or a dark elf if you're unfamiliar, and half spider. Finally, perhaps the creature best known from D&D is the owl bear, which is the head, feathers, and talons of an owl, and the body and legs of a bear. Many other pieces of modern fiction have invented their own fictional creatures, many of which are derivative of the ones listed above or combine more than two creatures together. Perhaps the only one I'll mention is the Cecilia, which is a term coined by fans to describe creatures that are half human, half octopus, like Disney's Ursula. Thank you so much for that question. I just love diving into this kind of stuff. Thank you again to Bill S., Sky Guy 91, and Phil. If you would like to have your question answered in a video, leave it in a comment below this one. If you would prefer to ask your question a little more privately, you can email me your question at questionsandasmr@gmail.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more questions